And it's fun. I mean, you sing songs, oh, how I love Jesus, and you go look for promises in the Bible, and you find out and start to argue even about whether the Bible is right. And there's a lot of discomfort. You know how children are. Everything scares them. Everything looks like they reason to doubt. All the stuff that you see Christians go through, that's spiritual childhood pretty much. So faith rest is really just basic Christian learning, living on promises, um, learning how to be moral, uh, all the things that they call for Christian fellowship. That's what children do. Just turn on TBN and listen to the rah-rah, and that's spiritual childhood. And it's very sweet and it's very precious, just like children are. But it is childhood. Okay, so the 10 problem-solving devices are these things at the bottom of the second box. 1 John 1:9, spirit filling, faith rest. Grace orientation now is what develops out of faith rest, and that's when you begin to make the transition from pink to gold. Because grace orientation is where, how do I want to put this? You know how kids are. Their daddy is better than somebody else's daddy. They're very insecure. Oh, Johnny, you didn't take a shower, but I did. You know how legalistic most Christians are? That's another characteristic of childhood. As you start to use 1 John 1:9 regularly, you're filled with the Spirit, so you got God's brains, and sure, you're a child, and he's careful, he's only going to fill you up to your capacity at that moment and sort of stretch you a little bit each time. And so as you're learning in faith rest, you're learning in Bible class, you're using what you learn outside of Bible class, you're claiming the promises of God. When something bad happens, you just throw it, like my pastor likes to say, you give it to the Supreme Court of Heaven. God will handle it. You don't try to solve your own problems or defend yourself. That's basically the faith rest life, very simple. As you're doing that over and over and over, because this is a circle every day, like the days goes from night to day, as you do that, you begin over time to have what's called, what he likes to call, grace orientation. You begin to appreciate how you're saved. You begin to appreciate how you didn't deserve it, but at first we have all this guilt about how bad we are. But you begin to realize that, wait a minute, it wasn't about guilt. God didn't care. I mean, he cares. That's why he sent his son. But he knew going in that we were going to be stinkers. Okay? He loves us anyway. And you begin to relax about that. You begin to realize that, hey, it's okay that I'm no good. Okay? You start to be able to receive grace. You stop feeling bad about it. And you start being able to receive grace from God. And, of course, you're really thrilled to death that you're not going to hell. And you're really enthusiastic about how gorgeous God is. You know how children are when they oh, Daddy, my daddy's so gorgeous, my God is so gorgeous. Yeah, he is. And you start to relax. And you start to realize it's okay that you're not okay. It's okay that you have to grow. It's okay that it's going to take 30 years before you become anything. It's okay that there's no fruit. Babies cannot bear fruit. Babies can and do doo-doo in their diapers. You're going to make all kinds of mistakes. You're going to do all kinds of stupid things. Okay, you're going to slap the tambourine and think you got to give to the church and do all these things, works around the church. That's not the spiritual life. It can be part of it. Kind of like, I don't know, having ketchup on your plate. Works around the church are like ketchup on a plate. They make it tastier. But the point is that as you go through these things, you start to relax about yourself. And you start to relax about other people. and the legalism that is so prevalent in Christianity today. Like all that stupid pro-life stuff that's anti-biblical to start with, and it's definitely childish. It's legalistic to the core. A lot of babies running around, okay? You start to lose that. You start to lose the babyhood. And that's what transforms you as you keep on doing the three functions in spiritual childhood. They're problem-solving devices because you're using them all the time to solve problems. As you do, you start growing into grace orientation and you start to relax. It's essential. You cannot get to adulthood if you don't learn to relax. And you start to relax about things that are wrong with you, your spouse, your kids, your job, politics, other people who bug you they somehow they bug you less because you know what? Something else is occurring. As you learn more about Bible, you're starting to look at God more. Well, if you're busy looking at God, you're busy not looking at other things. If you're busy looking at how gorgeous God is, you're not busy looking at the mote in somebody else's eye. If you're busy looking at how God is, you're not looking at what's wrong with you. I mean, we watch movies in order to escape the drudgery and boredom of life. We watch movies to get outside ourselves, really. And that's why they're so refreshing, is that we get outside ourselves. Well, grace orientation means that you're looking more at God. And it's a natural thing. It's really supernatural, but it's a natural part of the growth process to stop looking so much at yourself. Children are very self-focused. And as you grow up, you stop being so self-focused. So that's what the next part of this is. You make the transition, and it can be traumatic, but it's generally not. You move from spiritual adulthood to spiritual adolescence, and the hallmark characteristic of the switch is that you're much more relaxed about your own failures and the failures of others. And the other main characteristic, which really becomes paramount in spiritual adolescence, is you start to become very, very curious about God. And in fact, you cannot grow out of spiritual adolescence unless God becomes just front and center. You just have to get on fire about him personally, wanting to know him personally. And that all begins with grace orientation. And then the grace orientation hooks up with something my pastor likes to call doctrinal orientation. And what that is the big picture. You're sitting in spiritual childhood and you're finding out the definition of salvation, redemption, what's omnipotence, how to find Genesis in the Bible. You're learning lots of discrete facts. Kind of like when we were kids, you know how the teachers would tell us about history and science, and we had all these facts to memorize. Okay, but we didn't know how to use them. We couldn't see like how they all fit together. Well, in doctrinal orientation of spiritual adolescence, that's when the picture starts to fit together. You begin to see the interlinking. And again, 1 John 1:9 and spirit filling and faith rest are going on still. You're just progressing now to add this grace orientation and relaxation, plus the big picture is beginning to form doctrinal orientation in your head. So, it's like a series of epiphanies that you might not even notice. If you're going especially to Bible class daily, you won't notice it because it's happening so much, on a regular basis. And it's like there's this emerging sense of the whole, an emerging sense of what God looks like. That's the most important part of it. There's an emerging sense of what life is and what the spiritual life is and what your life is. Because the last thing you really know is who you are. That doesn't come until spiritual adulthood. But you're beginning to relax about the fact that you're you.